Hi, this is former Pro Bowl center for the Buffalo Bills, Eric Wood, and you're listening to Nate and the Fellas on the Circling the Wagons podcast. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo. Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo.
The Bills make me wanna shout.
Welcome to the Circling the Wagons podcast, a podcast discussing the Bills all year round with interviews, news, recaps, and insightful fan discussion. Most times. Here's your host and lifelong Bills fan, Nate.
Hey, Bills Mafia. Welcome to another episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo Bills fan podcast. I am your host, Nate. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We have our first preseason game to discuss. We saw the Bills square off against the Chicago Bears this past Saturday in Orchard Park. The Bears destroyed the Bills 33-6. Not even close a little bit. We have lots of thoughts on this. You know, should we or shouldn't we overreact to the outcome of the Bills' first preseason game? Some of the bright spots, some of the lowlights of this game, and a bunch of other things. But first, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Jon and Mike. Jon, I'll start off with you. Jon, how you feel as a Bills fan after that first preseason game. Is it time to panic? Do you have your finger on the panic button? Are you even looking in this general direction of the panic button, or you don't even know where it is and you don't care?
No, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not panicking, but that was pretty ugly. So they got a couple of games to clean it up, but it wasn't fun to watch.
I feel like you can say that you're not worried at the overall picture, but it still wasn't good. Still not what you'd like to see, right? Like, we're kind of caught in the middle of this. I know it's not that bad, but it wasn't good. I didn't really enjoy any of that. Like, I didn't look at that and be like, okay, now I feel confident. And the reason why I even say this is because the outside media, people that aren't paying attention to the Bills and the outside are like, this is going to be a down year for the Bills because of X, Y, and Z. They lost so many captains, Pro Bowl players, all pro players. Like, they did lose a lot of veteran leadership. But at the same time, you know, they still have Josh Allen. They added some weapons here and there. Like, they've added pieces to it. So I'm kind of pressing to where you are. Mike's with us, our other co-host, Mike, the podcast. Mike, where are you after the Bills, getting beaten by the Bears?
I don't. Do you remember last year preseason? No, I don't. No one does. No one cares.
Yeah. Well, last year, the Bills looked terrible against the Steelers. They lost 27-15. And, people were freaking out. I didn't remember until I looked back through my tweets of last year because it's been so long. But, yeah, I remember we were kind of worried.
The more surprising thing to me is football is very strange.
Very weird, right? It feels kind of soon. It feels like, whoa, I wasn't ready. It's like when school would get here. We're just like, oh, school's next week. Like, what? Where did summer go? It's just like the same thing. Like, oh, except we're actually excited about this as opposed to dreading it. And I'm used to premature things, actually. So it's kind of odd that I don't know what to do with this one.
Suffer from it?
I wouldn't say I suffer from it, Bob. I'm good either way. If the football season comes prematurely, or if it comes 4 months after I think it's going to come, and 4 months after I'm ready for it, or whatever, I'm still going to enjoy it. So you remember one thing I can't stand, and I don't know if it was like this when we were kids, is back to school sales in July. I think that's just messed up on so many levels. I know the big corporations out there, the big fat cats out there are trying to, get their sales ready for, all the parents and stuff like that. But just as a kid, I just feel bad for my kid. They literally just ended school and it's just oh yeah, remember, you got to go back soon, right?
Yeah,
And
Halloween's right around the
Halloween
corner.
now.
There's Halloween stuff out now. Yeah, the summer stuff's done.
Now that school's over, I go into summer.
Yeah. Your summer ends when the 60-degree days end. Or do you wait till you get that slight brisk in the air? Oh yeah, okay, all right, fall's here. Or when? It's just October 1st. Oh, nice. So I'm kind of in between both of you. I feel like I'm more like Jon, Aaron Rodgers quote when he's just relax, right? It's just, it's not that big of a deal. They didn't look good, though. Like, we can all agree. I know during the season, we do a lot more game recaps, and we go into a lot more depth of, like, our sweet, sassy, molassy plays of the game, our wall of famer, wall of shame, a lot of different things. Like, I'm not even going to go over stats of the game because it just doesn't matter. And a lot of this is just trying to see, who's playing where, who's getting starting snaps, who's getting the backup snaps, stuff like that. So, and there were still so many injuries at the safety position and so many other positions. Wide receiver, we haven't seen Chase Claypool since like the second day of training camp. So obviously that doesn't look good for him. But at the same time, it's like, there's only so many things you can take on with this. It's not like the regular season where every week matters. Every week is do or die. It's not great, but whatever. They'll probably fix it by then, or they're not showing the things that they want to. I don't know, Jon and Mike, if you agree with this, but like, I know we're not doing Wall of Fame or Wall of Shame, but if we did do Wall of Shame, one of the major things that points out to me is the defense didn't look that good in general. The starters, I know Caleb Williams looks like he's poised to be a good quarterback, and he looked good against the Bills starting defense. And that was kind of disappointing. He had like a 42-yard screen pass against the starters. The safeties looked out of place, which is, I know it was Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin might not even be the starter, but still, Taylor Rapp will be. And I think that we're kind of underestimating how much of a drop-off there could be at the safety position without Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer there this year. So I guess that's one of the big things that stood out to me. So, Jon, Mike, did you see that also, or is there anything else that stood out with you?
From the starting defense perspective, I mean, they didn't play Von Miller, didn't play Matt Milano. They had injuries at safety. I think it was fine. It was like a very bend but don't break, very much like last year, actually, when they had injuries. They weren't great on third down overall, but I think it was fine considering who wasn't playing and some of the injuries. Pass rush was terrible. The run blocking was bad, and then later in the game, the pass blocking was bad, although I think quarterback could have gotten rid of the ball quicker as well. Both backup quarterbacks were bad. Offense red zone wasn't good. Special teams, terrible, just as always. No improvements there.
Yeah, especially with like returning, right? Like bobbles and muffs.
Yeah, Hamler had a muff. Wide receivers, MVS had a bad drop. Like, Bills are still bad at kickoffs, even with the new kickoff rules.
Punting
too
too.
Many penalties. Yeah, Martin did have one really good punt, but after everything after that, Steve Chesker's like, "Oh, it's the wind every time." Steve Chesker, "Oh, it's the wind, dude. You can't. It's August. What are they gonna do in January?"
You're like, Steve's like, I know there was a tornado just a few days ago in Buffalo or a few weeks ago. I was like, there's still some remnants. Some of it is coming over Orchard Park. That was what caused that.
Yeah, way too many penalties. 11-something penalties. They took a lot of sacks towards the end. Those are all the negatives. I have a few positives when you're ready, but there were more negatives than positives.
What I'm going to say about the punting is funny that you mentioned that, because Martin did have that one good punt. And you're like, whoa. And if you look at Sam Martin's face after he had that, he looked just as surprised as anyone. Like, you're like, yeah, did you guys see that? I can do that. Like after, though, that one where he muffed and they're like, ooh, this isn't that good. It was like a 30-yard punt and it just happened to like go forward another 4 or 5 yards. I feel like they need more competition at punter. That scares me. But yeah, Jon, to go off what you were saying also about the backup quarterbacks, like, I know it goes without saying that we hope Josh Allen doesn't get injured. And I mean, we all hope to God he doesn't, because the season's over with. And it is very evident based on the way Mitchell Trubisky missed a wide open Quentin Morris in the end zone. He threw it on the wrong side of him.
He tried to force it to Keon, but it was just bad.
Mitch Trubisky and it wasn't, I'd like to blame the offensive line, but he was working with the first string offensive line through part of that too. So it wasn't just the offensive line.
No, he's off target. He's got an arm, but he was off target.
Yeah, off target.
The running game was bad, too. There was some flashes from Frank Gore Jr., but I didn't see a lot from Ray Davis, necessarily.
Oh, wait. Before you leave Ray Davis, I did see him pick up a blitz on a pass play.
There you go.
And he stuffed a hole. It was like, ooh, like...
Okay.
It was something, because he didn't look good running the ball. You're right. But, I mean, in his defense, like, it wasn't like he had a hole and he just got dragged down. Like, before he even got to the line of scrimmage, it felt like guys were already on him,
Yeah. Is he hurt?
Yes, he's hurt right now.
That's why I see him. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm concerned about the depth at receiver, I think. Like Curtis Samuel looks good. Khalil Shakir looks really good. I think Hollins was hurt, so he didn't play.
Correct.
MVS had a bad drop. I know we saw a little bit of Isabella on returns. Shavers, I know I saw him, and I know he's been having a camp.
But he wasn't getting any looks with Allen, though, as opposed to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. MVS was like, I think he actually got some snaps with Allen.
Right.
Only been because Mac Hollins was out, too.
Yeah, I'm not sure about how that is going to make the roster. So, like, it's going to be Samuel, Coleman, Shakir, and Hollins, and then who are going to be the next two guys? That's going to be tough.
It is going to be tough.
Tough decision.
That's one of the few positions like 5th and 6th wide receiver, which we don't have clarity on now, and we might not until the start of the season. I mean, injuries might play a role in that, just like it has with safety this entire time. So, yeah, we'll keep tabs on that. I know we're going into positives. I want to talk about negatives just for one quick second, like you were saying. The offensive
bring
line,
on the negatives.
Let's just shit all over this team. So the offensive line did not look good. Pass blocking, pre-snap penalties, run blocking. I mean, it was just like, we kind of went into the season. We knew they lost Mitch Morse. We knew they were moving Connor McGovern over. We knew they were putting David Edwards in. We're like, well, let's see what we can do. The Bills did had a 3-and-out the first drive with, Allen. And I know that's such a small sample size. It's not indicative of how an entire game would go for Josh Allen at the helm, but it didn't make me feel better. It wasn't like they looked good.
I'm not super worried about the starting offensive line yet. Last year, it was very similar to the offensive line after the first game. They didn't look great. Dawkins looked terrible, blah, 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 blah. Torres played really well throughout the whole year. So I'm not worried about that part yet. I'm more worried about the depth at receiver and a little bit at OL. They do have players that I like on OL depth. It's just, we just got to see more of it to be sure, one way or the other, I think.
So your boy Alec Anderson got second team snaps at center, I believe. I think it was second team with Mitch Trubisky. And did you see that missed snap where like he snapped it too soon and like everyone just piled on top of Mitch Trubisky on third down?
And Brent Granger still played a lot, and towards the end, he was also playing with other third string offensive linemen. So it's kind of hard to judge because they have to play as a unit.
One thing to note is, speaking of the line defensively, though, Javon Solomon, the 5th round rookie, he was getting snaps before Kingsley Jonathan and Cameron Klein. So John won't like that. Kingsley Jonathan's one of his favorite players ever. So
I like Solomon. I already had him ahead of Klein, I think.
But you weren't sure about Kingsley Jonathan.
Yeah, because Kingsley Jonathan has looked pretty good from what we've seen.
He looks okay. John's like, something about Jonathan.
Were we all talking about like, oh, he should play above Von Miller? And
yes. Dude, I would have taken a paper bag over Von Miller towards the end of last year. Like, he was bring a practice guy.
He's going to be back week 1, though.
Von Miller?
I'm telling you. Yeah, Von Miller's going to be back.
Back how?
Back full force. Let's go. Back.
John.
Who you've been listening to, Von Miller?
A little bit, yeah. But no, he's betting on himself. He took a pay cut, but can make it all back in incentives, which means he knows he's ready to be back.
Terrible gambler. Betting on himself. Well, maybe you shouldn't bet on yourself in this. Myself has let myself down so many times.
I think it's going to be interesting at linebacker because Milano and Bernard are. Wait, do they play the same linebacker position?
No, they play different linebacker positions.
Yeah, so that works out perfect. All right.
Nardog with
that's gonna be fun because like for a while they had Edmonds and different players, but there was a time where like linebacker might be the weakest spot on the defense, but now it's probably their strength.
I think the starters might be their strength, but they don't have a ton of depth besides it. Like Dorian Williams, the second-year linebacker out of Tulane, he's the first backup to Milano, so I like him, but I think he has a ton of athletic ability. I think he has a ton of instinct. He just needs to hone that all in.
Yeah.
But they don't have a lot of
think-
guys besides that. That's the only thing.
I think that's going to be a theme for almost every position this year. They don't have the depth. They have good starters. You look at defensive tackle. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones. Defensive end. Miller, Rousseau, Epides. So we already talked about quarterback. We already talked about receiver and offensive line.
Do you see?
They might be deepest at tight end, right? Kincaid, Knox, and Morris for the third, even corner. Unless I know Kyrie Elam sounds like he's having a good camp. I know people like Jamarcus Ingram, so corner might be okay. But overall, in the roster, people are mostly satisfied with their starters. But if people start going down, it's going to be rough.
No? Is it his playing style? Do you don't like how well he's doing?
I have him as a fifth safety.
I think he's only starting because Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop are injured, to be honest.
I have Cam Lewis ahead of him, and he's like a corner/safety.
I mean, the guy that would be the ultimate story, like comeback story, right? Like he got thrust into the starting role. He had this major, incident, and then he came back and he's playing in the NFL. And the last part of it is he becomes a really good player, and he just hasn't gotten to that level. But what's crazy is he's the most recognizable Bills player besides Josh Allen, and sometimes more than Josh Allen in other countries. So like people know who Damar Hamlin is, which is crazy to think. And that's probably one of the reasons why the Bills are one of the most global teams in the world, because of what happened with Damar Hamlin partially. But yeah, he didn't look great. Damar Hamlin, yeah. I don't know if it's going to click for him. You were mentioning injuries earlier, John, like we're injury away from this or that. Ed Oliver got injured on the first defensive snap. Like, I was just like, really? With a knee injury? I mean, luckily they said he was cleared to return, but no one wants to see that. Like, the Bills have already been injury riddled enough the last couple of seasons. You're like, okay, regression to the mean. Like, it has to change this year, right? Like, it doesn't look good so far, though. A lot of injuries on the Bills team.
Well, that was actually one of my positives for this game. There were no major or significant injuries as a result of this game.
True. Nothing major. And that's all that matters, right? We're still another 4 weeks away from the season. Everything's so I want to share some of the thoughts on Twitter from the Bills' first preseason game. I posted on Twitter, what are your thoughts on the first preseason game, Bills Mafia? How are you feeling? So I'll start with the poll I put right under it. How are you feeling? Thumbs up, thumbs down, the throw up emoji, or the it is what it is emoji, like hands on your shoulders. What are you going to do? So most people picked the what are you going to do emoji. So 56%. Second one, though, was the throw up emoji at 24%. So 24%. And then it was thumbs up was about 10%. Thumbs down was about 8%. So NFL ref stats says sloppy, a lot of penalties, plenty to clean up on that front. The good news is the game doesn't mean anything. I only Trey underscore TTV says, there are some things you should be able to do no matter what situations you're in because you're just that good. Running the ball, aka moving the guy in front of you, should be one of them. Another offseason and another question on that O-line. Can't really disagree with anything there. Then again, I always come back to that. The Bills always lost all the preseason games when they'd go to the Super Bowl, but I don't know. Maybe that's wishful thinking there.
Yeah, I don't care about losing the preseason games. I care about how they look in general and certain players that I'm looking at and the depth and this and that. I know they got cut down to 53 at some point, so they're going from like 91 to 53.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I agree with like what he said. Like I only Trey underscore TTV was like, you should be able to move the guy in front of you. Like, yeah, that would be nice if they could, even if it's a vanilla scheme or whatever, that they were still good enough that they could still push the person in front of them, right? Unless the defense just throw these crazy coverages at them or whatever, like, I don't know. Just different looks that they weren't expecting or whatever. Push the man in front of you. Move the guy in front of you. I think that was well put. Bills fan Corey writes, Hakuna Matata, I've seen time and time again where undefeated preseason teams struggle in season games and when less preseason teams come flying out of the gate. Yeah. Koala Bear Khan, I didn't get to see it, but based off the reactions, we are in preseason form already. Yeah, Bills Mafia on social media. Already into it. Brian Football writes, the financial resources they put into special teams relative to other franchises should have Smiley getting fired. Sam Martin and Tyler Bass will lose games just like in 23. Hamler, see ya. OL, WTF. DL, lost all day. Half speed of Chicago. Half-ass is what looked best. A lot of fire in there from Brian. Special teams didn't look good. I've always said this for like the last 6 or 7 years. The amount of money they put into special teams, the amount of money they put into these guys, or at least these specialists, quote unquote specialists on that side of the ball, like they should be better than average. And still, they not only aren't better than average, like they seem to be very bad. Like bottom third in the NFL.
I got a positive light on that, on the special team situation for you, if it makes any sense. During the drought, the Bills had some really good special teams ranked very high and a lot of good special teams players, but they never made the playoffs. Now they're always in the playoffs, winning their division, and they have a bad special teams. Maybe it's not the worst thing that's their fault.
Yeah. I want to believe what you believe, John. So yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to go with that too. Thank you. That sounds much better than me spiraling down into like this void of like depression and like just not being able to find myself and just like, what's going on in the world? Did I pick the right team? Like, so I like yours. I don't like going down spiraling depressions.
I just thought of another positive. McDermott was 2 for 2 on challenges.
Wow.
It was like not obvious at all. Like nobody was giving it a second thought. They're like, all right, next play. And they're like, oh, we're going to throw a challenge flag, and won it easily. So, and the first one was obvious and it was good that he threw it, but 2 for 2 on challenges. That's a big positive.
That's like more than he's got in the last 3 years in that one game. 2 good challenges. Yeah. Very nice. Danny Breege writes, I know it's preseason, but they didn't even show up, any of them. Come on, man. Yeah. Jonathan Reddy says, take the preseason pledge and move on. Yep. Nothing matters. None of this matters. We're all going to be dead soon. Oh, no, that's not what part of the preseason pledge. It's just part of my motto. Buffalo for life writes, you guys are funny. The Chiefs lost 26-13 to the Jags today. Bet their fans don't give 2 shits about it because they know it doesn't matter. Bet we won a lot of preseason games during our drought years. How'd that turn out? Quote unquote, this is our year. Stop. I don't know if I believe all of that, but it doesn't matter. I agree. But I guarantee that Patrick Mahomes only played like a series, maybe didn't even play at all. It's not the outcome. Like you said, it's not the outcome that matters. It's not the score at the end of the day. It's like their performance in between. Like, why did everyone look bad? Like Khalil Shakir, like you said, was one of the bright spots, John. I mean,
Curtis Samuel looked good. Coleman was targeted. He got the first down.
Keon Coleman looked good. I mean, he had great route separation on that one play.
Yeah. And then like in the end zone with Trubisky and everything, I know their feet got tangled up, and another play, Mitch forced it in there. But it's not Josh Allen, so like you can't compare all that.
Exactly. Josh Allen throwing that ball. Slava Malamud writes, let the rebuild begin. Jeez. All right. Settle down there, Slava. The Buffalo Guy 716 writes, it's just preseason, no worries, but pretty brutal on all fronts. Yeah, it doesn't matter, but yeah, not great. Not great, Bob. A mess. Jason, the Bills fan from Scotland, writes, a mess. I'm not sure what the Bills coaches and players were trying to achieve out there tonight. Well, if their achievement was trying to not get everyone majorly injured, I think they succeeded in that. But other than that, I don't think they succeeded on hardly anything else. John Donahue writes, one of the worst preseason games in recent memory. Bills no longer have the talent and depth we've enjoyed the past few years. You know what's funny is it wasn't, I think it was part of last year. I remember the second and third stringers getting in there against even like the first teamers. Was that last year or the year before, where I'm just like, they're taking the first team of the other teams like defense to task. Like they're not looking bad.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is a deep team. This looks good. And that, not so much, as John says. Nunya Business writes, painful, but it's preseason. Bears won't be used to scores like that eventually. Yeah. 33 points. Philip Masterson writes, nobody got hurt. I'll take that as a win. Agree. Gregory, the sports bully, writes, just a complete no-show in all 3 phases by all 3 strings. The starting D looks soft. The starting OL moved no one. Yosh Schmenge writes, you don't remember last year's preseason. You won't remember next year's preseason. You won't remember this year's preseason because it has no effect on the regular season. If you're sweating the preseason, you're drinking too much. Buffalo John, one of our co-host John's favorite Twitter accounts, says it's preseason. Just sweater. Maybe your burner. I can't tell. He doesn't look anything like you, but that would be a really good burner. Ed Albrigo writes, meh. While I realize this is the first preseason game, didn't see the vibe that many referenced in camp. More glad that there were no critical injuries. Yeah. Do you like how they pulled Josh Allen as soon as he slid for that first down? Like, they're like, all right, you're done. Like, as soon as the next play started, or I think it was the start of the next quarter, they're like, you're done. You're done for the rest of the game. We don't need to see that. Josh said he wanted to go out and finish the drive, and Sean just thought it was the right time. The Rube says it's preseason. Detroit went 4-0 before their historic winless season.
Should Josh Allen have even played at all? I get like rapport with a lot of he's only ever thrown a pass to Shakir in the regular season, but it's kind of, would you want to play him at all?
So normally I'd say don't even bother, right? Like, what good does it do? It can only bad things can happen. I could see the logic of him needing to get a rapport with their new starting center, Connor McGovern. Like, I've heard the snaps were kind of an issue in training camp, the exchange between Josh Allen and Connor McGovern. So like that I could see them working on. Just the O-line in general, like as a cohesive unit with two, new starters, one new starter, but two different players playing different positions.
Counts and all
Snap
that.
counts. Like you said, the rapport with the wide receivers. Normally they mentioned on the broadcast, Josh Allen hasn't played a starting game in 5 years, like the first preseason game in 5 years. So that must be the thought and logic behind it. But still, after they saw the pressure, it's like, why even let him play at all?
Yeah, when Edmonds was up in his face and tipped the ball, I was like, all right, take him out.
Someone hit the ball as he threw it. That's enough. I don't need to see anymore. I don't need him. Someone wrote 7 and 10. Robert Renzoni wrote 7 and 10. It's in response. 7 and 10. Oh man. So not great. Obviously, I also wrote, how close are you to the panic button after that preseason game? 65% were like, I don't even know where that panic button is. 28% were like, I can see it over there, but I'm not pressing it. And only 6% of Bills Mafia were like, I'm pressing that panic button furiously out of 355 votes. So again, most of the fan base does agree with us. Like, they're not happy about it, but they're not worried about it either. I think it's so funny with social media, you kind of think it's one extreme or the other. But that's what I love about the polls, is because it kind of puts things in perspective. It's like, really, the majority aren't really worried about it. Tills Mafia wrote underneath that, if weeks 1 and 2 look exactly how it did today, I'm slamming that panic button. Tifaha writes, there's no panic for me when you know it's a transition year. Tifaha, it is not a transition year. Like it's just, it was supposedly a transition year for the Chiefs last year and they won the Super Bowl. So it's not a transition year when you have Josh Allen and a lot of the players that they have on this team, like a lot of good players still. Michael Graham writes, this game meant absolutely nothing. It was good to see the players out there, and I think the coaching staff got a lot of answers from those quote-unquote roster bubble players. This game did exactly what it was meant to do. Yeah, it might have weeded out some of those guys that were on the roster bubble. So that was a great point by Michael. And I think if I were to guess who's on the roster bubble, I know we've mentioned him a few times. MVS, I think, is on it, potentially. Like, if Chase Claypool comes back next week and he plays pretty good in the last couple of games, I think MVS isn't on the roster. Or, right now it's just he's the veteran, wide receiver. But I could see him looking from the outside in. But yeah. Any other thoughts, guys, on, this preseason game? I know we've kind of covered it in depth with a lot of different, topics. Anything else you want to talk about with this? Mike's saying don't panic. And I know John's not saying panic either. He's just not happy with the performance. But like Mike said, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So I'm good with it. So I'm hoping to have a good interview this next week about the Bills, post their first preseason game, to discuss with that individual about that. I'm going to release that hopefully before the preseason game this next week, because I'm going to be out of town. A few of us are going to be out of town for that game, but we will be back for the August 25th. So if you're listening to us on all platforms, that is tentatively when we're hoping to do our first video podcast. We're just ironing out a few details, finishing that up with a few things. So we're looking to do that. So yeah, stay tuned for that. So be sure to be checking out the Bills Mafia Facebook group, the official one. It's the one that has the most people on it. So if you're ever wondering, oh, is this an official Bills Mafia group or is this just another random Bills Mafia group? If it has like 160,000 people or 60,000, I can't remember how many. Like, I have no idea at this point. I think it's like 60,000 people or something. Like, that's the one. Okay. Look for us there. Look for us on our Facebook account, our YouTube account, our Twitter account. Trying to think of where else it would be. Instagram account, I think we're going to do too. Hopefully try to do it there. So yeah, lots to discuss and to pontificate about. This is probably the biggest word I've ever used on this podcast. Besides svelte, Jon's svelte appearance after losing 55 pounds. Dude, Jon, you're inspired. Your weight loss has inspired other people to write in and say that they've lost some weight or they're working on losing weight. And yeah, man, you're inspiring. You're going to have that washboard six-pack soon and we won't know what to do. Good for you, man. You deserve props.
Thank you.
You're so humble, too. So humble. I'd be like, yeah. Be like, I knew it was going to happen. But eventually. So anyway, thank you guys all for listening. I appreciate you guys being a part of this. If you have any questions or any comments on this episode or the preseason games in the future, please feel free to reach out to us on social media. Email us, ctwpod@gmail.com. Give us your thoughts and comments there, and we can read them next week. Thank you guys all for listening. Appreciate the heck out of it. Signing off for Jon.
Go Bills.
For Mike.
Go Bills.
And for me, Nate, go Bills. Next week.
Let's go Buffalo! Hey, let's go Buffalo! Hey, let's go Buffalo! Hey, let's go Buffalo! Find us out in the parking lot. We got the tailgate down in our favorite spot. We're all fired up and our friends are here. We got some damn good food and a ton of beer. It's finally Sunday. We can't wait for the Bills to play. So kick it off, 12 men. Let's hear you scream. Let's hear you scream. Let's hear you scream. It's finally Sunday. We can't wait for the Bills to play. So kick it off, 12 men. Let's hear you scream.
Thank you for listening to the Circling the Wagons podcast. Download and subscribe to us in your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills!
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, Nate.
Well, listen, the whole show is called Circling the Wagons. Say no more. I love it.